A ballerina's perspective, from performing with New York City Ballet and Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater to publishing poetry books and mentoring kids and teens. Join us in a weekly discussion with experts to gain mental health clarity and achieve growth in moral consciousness. Give our show a 5 stars, comment, share, and come along for the ride. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth, Grace, and Gratitude podcast. Today we have a special guest with us. Dr. Laura Lovett is an organizational psychologist and thought leader sought after internationally for her expertise on workplace culture, career development, toxic leadership, and burnout. Along with her 25 years of experience in her field, she holds a PhD in industrial organizational psychology from the University of Calgary, where she is currently an adjunct professor. A passionate entrepreneur, she has founded several psychology practices in Canada and hosts the widely followed podcast Where Work Meets Life. Dr. Laura is also a co-founder of the With Her movement, focused on ending violence against women and girls. She received a Canadian Women of Inspiration Award as a global influencer in 2018. Wow, such a beautiful work you're doing. And so interestingly enough, today is actually World Teen Mental Wellness Day. So I thought that was really an interesting alignment, how there's so much work when it comes to mental health and teenagers. And so often when teenagers are exposed in leadership communities, sometimes it's so hard for them to understand what is safe, what is toxic, what is healthy.
Yeah, it is, and it's a tough world to navigate these days. There's so much fear and uncertainty, and a lot of these teenagers we can't forget grew up in the pandemic years and have grown up with the constant comparison of technology, and it's not an easy time to be a teenager.
It's so true. And the work you're doing is so beautiful. I think connecting with leadership is so important for anybody, whatever your career may be. Me growing up as a professional ballet dancer, we have so many choreographers come in, and we're always asked to follow suit, follow the leader, and take notes. But then it's so nice when we have the choreographers ask for our input, for our advice. I think it's so wonderful that so many leaders these days who are kind of aligning with the conscious idea of what it means to be a leader in these days and these times. And they are merging everybody who's in the space to lend a hand. That's shifting the workspace, the creative space so much. And I'm happy that more and more people are kind of gathering on this trend.
Absolutely. And great leadership is more important than ever before, but we don't have enough of it. There are not enough great leaders in organizations across industries, nonprofits, schools, you name it. And I've spent a lot of my career helping to develop good and great leadership. And in this last section of my career, I've really been focused on eradicating toxic leadership and the damage that it's doing to human beings.
Yes, that's a very important topic. Can we talk about a little bit, like, how do you define what is a toxic boss, and would you describe a few of their traits and maybe some specific personas? If you're ready to shake off that daily stress, come join us for online beginner adult ballet and yoga classes each week to connect with the flow of movement and the art of ballet into perfect synergy. Come as you are and learn to love your body a little bit more and gain strength and flexibility with each class. All are welcome. Sign up at Ballet Arts Movement @gmail.com. First class free. TeloVital supports focus, energy, immunity, sleep, recovery, and resilience. Start feeling better today on a cellular level with zeolite, super green juice, micronutrient gut support, and more. Get over 50% off your first order for TeloVital. Link in the description of the podcast. Sanger Daniel's online seminar promoting a positive message of self-healing with bioenergy work together with live seminars and remote coaching. Use code BIO20 for a 20% discount for our audience. Link in the description of the podcast.
So I really got into this topic because I saw the damage with so many of my clients across North America having suffered under a toxic boss. And I really wanted to do more research on it to understand it. And as an adjunct professor of psychology, I have a team of students and we're able to dig into topics. And we found there wasn't that much research in North America and not post-pandemic. So we really started doing interviews and surveys and really getting at what are these behaviors that toxic bosses are doing. And toxic bosses are causing harm through their ongoing behaviors that are overt or covert. And the behaviors may be the obvious upfront things like bullying and harassment, or they may be the more sneaky, subtle, covert behaviors like manipulation, dishonesty, gaslighting. So I needed a way, Ari, to make it for my readers, the people I'm supporting, to understand what are we dealing with. So in my new book, I Wish I'd Quit Sooner, I have the 8 personas of a toxic boss, and then checklists and ways to figure out, okay, I'm dealing with these 3 or these 4 personas. A toxic boss is often more than one persona. And some of the examples are the dishonest manipulator, the great divider who separates teams and people, the control freak who micromanages but to the 100th degree, the unethical corrupter who fudges the numbers and the data to make themselves look good. And the list goes on.
Wow. And I think it's so interesting because I feel like we all can be small parts of those kind of toxic personalities, but not to the point where we manipulate and we create such disparity and such confusion within the space.
And I mean, I always like to distinguish a difficult from a toxic boss. I think many of us can have difficult boss qualities. We can be sometimes not great communicators. We can not delegate appropriately. Maybe we are disorganized, and that causes frustration to people around us. And we're all guilty of it. And there are a lot of difficult leaders that need to become better, and we can coach them and train them and help them, and they are open to the self-insight, whereas a toxic boss is not open to the self-insight. It's never their fault. They do not see anything wrong with them, and it's everyone else that's the problem. And yeah, so those are the ones I've decided to focus on in this book, because if you're working for one of them, you are suffering, and you know it's brutal. You're not looking forward to work. It's sucking your soul.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think people are starting to realize more and more when they're learning their own self-value and their self-awareness, they start to understand how people can be reflecting toxic, whether it is like a toxic relationship or toxic boss. There's more insight, there's more reflection there. So that's really inspiring that so many people are learning more about this, because before it was like that's just the way it is, or that's what you have to just deal with. And it's so hard on obviously the psyche, the mental health, anxiety. There's so much pressure to kind of hold up your integrity as well.
Yeah, it's brutal. And when you're under a toxic boss, it erodes your confidence and your energy. And you need confidence and energy to get another job, or to open your own business if you decide to be an entrepreneur, or to move within the organization. If you have a big enough organization, you can move within it sometimes, but you just don't have the energy and the confidence because it's been eroded by the toxic boss. And it's not your fault. You're not alone. 87% of people have reported to a toxic boss, and that's a lot. And almost half of people have left their job because of a bad boss. So this is a common issue.
It's so interesting. And I think for people who are wanting to kind of break free from the toxic boss and wanting to branch out and, find a better job, a better employer to work with, what are some tips to avoid getting stuck in the same situation again?
Yeah, I have a whole chapter on that, Ari, on how to never again work for a toxic boss. Because there are warning signs. And I asked when we did all the interviews and with toxic boss survivors, we asked what were the warning signs if you could look back, because hindsight's 2020, and they said things like they would interrupt. So the toxic boss tends to interrupt. They tend to dominate interviews. So they are interviewing you, yet they're doing most of the talking because they love the sound of their own voice. And they are painting a picture of a perfect workplace. And we know, no, I'm an organizational psychologist. No workplace is perfect. They all have flaws, just like no family is perfect. Every family is dysfunctional. It's a matter of how much. And it's on a continuum from highly dysfunctional to highly functional. But I would say workplaces have their ups and downs, their pros and cons. So if they're painting this as, oh, our team is amazing and this culture is perfect and it's a family, or it's just the best place ever, it should be a red flag, because it needs to be a balance of, yes, there's positives, we have a great vision here, and here's some of the struggles that we face, and here's some of the things that we're working on getting better at. And it needs to be more of a balanced sales pitch to whatever opportunity you're looking at.
That's amazing. And I think it's so motivating for people to know that there is a next step that's possible, because people are so fearful of breaking free and starting new, or then being afraid they'll fall under the same experience. So yeah, it's so important to be just like aware and to keep your eyes open. I think that's also, it shows a sign of a good employee and somebody who actually cares about their work.
Yeah. And remember that when you're interviewing, you're being interviewed, but you're also interviewing your next boss. You're interviewing them on, what do you like to work with as a leader? How do you like to be communicated with? What types of people do you find work the best with your team? So you're asking them questions as well. And that's really important. And oftentimes at the end of an interview, when you get asked, do you have any questions for me? We often ask about compensation or vacation, or those. I mean, those things are easy to ask about. Whereas the culture, the leadership style, you'll start to get red flags, I call them. A red flag can be just skirting over the issue. Or if you say, what's your leadership style like? They have a hard time answering it, or they're just, exaggerating in some way. And the best thing is if you can talk to other people who have reported to that person in the past. And our good friend LinkedIn allows us to connect with, so many people that we could have never connected with before, and search where they used to work and build out our network that way. And yes, most people will not diss a former boss to a stranger. However, if you're introduced through someone you know and you can ask some questions, they may tell you little bits and pieces. And sometimes it's what they don't say. So if you ask them, hey, what were they like to work for? And they say something kind of vanilla, like, oh yeah, no, it was fine. It was whatever. It was good. There's not many accolades in there. Right? You just got to be careful, because under the surface, there's usually a lot more going on that they don't say.
Yes, that's such a good point. And in your book, I Wish I'd Quit Sooner, what was the breaking point that you had to kind of experience to be like, okay, I am officially done here? Like if you had a personal experience that you went through and it shaped your
Okay.
decision to be like, I am done here.
I've been through a couple of toxic bosses myself earlier in my career. I I've seen the tears, the horrible mental health impacts on my clients, and yeah, I knew I had to write the book. I knew I had to produce this book for the world. I thought about writing a book for organizations and how to eradicate it, but I thought that it was more important to, first of all, help the people suffering and struggling. And oftentimes, when they come out the other end, there's so many learnings. They become stronger from the experience and they end up doing great things in the world as a next step. And that's what I'm all about, helping people find their purpose, their meaning, their broader life plan. Having focused on career psychology for a lot of my career.
Podpitch is the first and only software that finds, writes, and sends pitches to podcast hosts from your actual email address. Podpitch will make sure you get podcast bookings, guaranteed. Link in the description of the podcast. ClickFunnels easily build any type of online business and sales funnel in record time, no matter what your product, service, or niche, without any tech design or experience whatsoever. Try the ClickFunnels 14-day free trial. Link in the description of the podcast. Unlock your best life with Soul App. Book a holistic wellness experience with a trained guide and start changing your life today with compassion practices, inner healing, food and diet, and so much more. Tap into a healthier and happier life with the #1 purposeful living app in the US, the Soul App. Link in the description of the podcast. It's also so great to shift this workplace culture for people to adjust to the new times of building conscious leadership. If there's any advice you want to give to like the youth who are starting out in this new world of conscious self-awareness, what tips can they take away with them when it comes to like getting a new job and having the faith that they'll be aligned to a good boss?
I would love to fill people with hope, so young people with hope, that there's a lot of scary news, there's a lot of toxic social media, there's a lot of this, but there's a lot more light in the world than there is negativity or harmful people. It's just the harmful stuff gets to the top of the media because the story sells, and the negative, social media post gets more likes, and because it's just more dramatic. But I would say there's a lot of people who are doing important, good work and want to help others, that we need more great leaders, that there are some great leaders out there. There's a lot of good leaders, average leaders. I mean, I'm talking about the toxic today, but I would give it about 5% of all leaders are toxic. So we're not talking about the majority. So don't be scared of this conversation. There are difficult bosses. Yes, there are toxic bosses, but there are some good leaders out there. And more importantly, I think youth should get mentors. Find a mentor to be able to bounce ideas off of, to be able to get advice from. I think mentorship is a beautiful thing for our youth.
It's such wonderful support and advice you're offering to the community. And how can your book also help business leaders as well as HR to better identify and deal with toxic bosses, just like overall?
I think it gives a language to name what's happening, to name the personas, the 8 personas, the behaviors, the patterns, and then the impacts. So it's the mental health impacts, the physical health impacts. I discuss a lot in the book. I discuss the productivity and performance and engagement impacts of the workplace, the financial impacts to organizations. So the more that we can arm organizational leaders and HR to understand this phenomenon, the more I'm hoping that they can have the courage and the motivation to do something about it. Because one-off cases are sad. I mean, if you know someone's suffering and they've had to take a medical leave or they filed a complaint, etc., that's a one-off case. But if we can see that, hey, this is actually a systemic, broader issue in society across industries, and no one industry is immune, no gender is immune, no ethnicity is immune. I see toxic boss behavior across anyone. So it's not targeted towards certain demographics.
Such a good point. Oftentimes We think like, oh, if you're we have a woman boss, they're perfect because they're women and they're not the men, they're not toxic
Mm-mm.
men, but we've had a whole we've had a lot of toxic women. It's just having those
Mm-hmm.
experiences are totally validating that yes, it's not just one type or one gender,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
I think women are more impacted by it than men on average, just from all the stats that I've seen. And but I would say a woman is just as likely to be a toxic boss as a man. There are fewer women in leadership roles, hence there are fewer women who are toxic bosses, if that makes sense.
Yes, exactly.
It's
That's
kind of
true.
hard to explain, but I feel that it's true from what I've seen. But it really, gender aside, nobody should have to suffer under abuse, whether it's in a romantic relationship with a boyfriend, a girlfriend, whatever it is, or a supervisor, someone in a position of power. No one should have to suffer abuse. And I want people to keep that in mind at any age, at any stage.
That's very true. And when it comes to honoring your values and your self-beliefs, for people who are experiencing toxic bosses and they kind of can't leave, or they're under a situation where they can't fully quit currently, is there any advice you can give them?
Yes, take care of yourself. Remember that you need to rebuild your energy reserves every day because a toxic boss will deplete you. Think of a glass of water, and by the end of the day, it is empty. You need to be refilling it even throughout the day. Someone told me, actually, today in a conversation, it's the three W's. Try multiple times during your workday to walk, even if it's walking around the block or the office, um, looking out a window, looking at nature, looking at a view. So, window. And then the third is water. Make sure to drink a lot of water. Honestly, those things are simple, but they're the little things that matter. We need to take care of our mental health like we take care of our dental health. I learned that from another podcast guest a few years ago. I love that. Imagine if you never brushed your teeth again. Just stop brushing your teeth. Same with mental health. You got to pay attention to it on a daily basis by feeding your energy, feeding your soul, feeding your spirit. You need to be re energizing yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. That's how we're going to get through this mental health pandemic that we find ourselves in.
Beautifully said, 100%. That is so true. And I think everything you mentioned is just going to help everyone become a better self leader. And then when they're able to better take care of themselves, they can be better leaders to others and then take more risk and action to align themselves with the aligned leaders, hopefully that are more intentional as well.
Exactly. Exactly. And I love Ari how you focused on youth because youth are the leaders of tomorrow and they're going through a really hard time. And I'm the chair of a performing arts organization that we've been around 40 years and it's show choirs. So we're probably the the biggest show choir organization in Canada and we compete around the world and whatnot. And but it's that singing, that dancing, that community for kids, maybe kids who don't fit into sports and sports teams. Performing arts is like a team, and I'm sure with the ballet it was the same thing. It's like being on a team and mattering.
Actually went to high school at the Professional Performing Arts High School in New York City. So yes, all of my classmates were dancers, singers, actors, musicians. It was just a joy to be around so many kids who just love the creative arts. And I feel like every teacher we had just felt like a kid themselves. We had so much fun because there was a level of respect, and I think every teacher actually was one of the best examples of leadership that I've ever experienced, because there was such, yeah, like just the respect to give children. Normally, when you're a teacher, you obviously want respect given to you because you're the teacher. You have all the answers supposedly in class. But when a teacher is able to see the children's values as they're growing up and evolving, it was just so beautiful to see. So, yeah, the performing arts connection, I love that.
Beautiful. And it's about compassionate leadership, right? The polar opposite to a toxic boss is a compassionate leader. And we need more of that in the world. Leaders who care, who are empathetic, and who want to bring out the best in their people and develop their people.
100%. And also, where can people get your book and connect with you with your social media?
That's a great question. So the book is on all the major bookseller platforms, including audio, so Audible, etc. It's called "I Wish I'd Quit Sooner." You can find all the platforms it's on my website, which is Dr. Laura, DRLAURA, all is one word, .live, drlaura.live. And you'll see it on all the platforms. My podcast is on there. I write blogs. I'm on all the social medias. I'm on all of them. I'm trying to share important information about the intersection of work and life, because I believe if we have thriving humans, then we have thriving organizations, a better planet, and purpose for people. So that's kind of my angle. There's a Dr. Laura in the US. I'm not that Dr. Laura. I'm Dr. Laura based in Canada, but really I'm a global citizen. I believe that we have a lot more in common than we do differences throughout the world. But in the end of the day, people want compassion, they want to be seen, they want to be heard, and they want to matter.
It's a beautiful humanitarian approach. That's so true. And I think the more compassion we have towards ourselves and others, this definitely bonds people together. It brings out so much connection. And I think through that authentic vulnerability, we're able to learn so much more about what actually is leadership. It's kind of like increasing connection, bonds, understanding. And I think this is also healing for humans on a soul level.
Mhm. Mhm. It really is. It really is. And people aren't going to say, "How many hours did you work? How many projects did you bring in?" No, they're going to talk about the lives you touched and how you helped others in the family or your friends or neighbors. That's the type of stuff that will matter long after you're gone.
Exactly. It's like the impact and the missions you're choosing to take on with integrity and kindness and character. So, yeah, I love this. Thank you so much, Dr. Laura, for coming on the podcast and sharing with us your gifts, your experiences, your journey, your wisdom with our community.
My absolute pleasure. It was so lovely to meet you, Ari.